All right. Let's talk about some stuff to know. So that's one of the things right away, stuff to know. Know the difference between anatomy and physiology. Like structure, function. On the very first page of the lecture notes, talk about like pathophysiology, comparative anatomy, microanatomy, gross anatomy. Have an idea what it is. Okay? That makes sense? Three foundational concepts that we're going to build upon. Here in AP1, and I believe a lot of you are going to take AP2 eventually. AP2 is founded on this course. Students hate when I say this, but it is true. Many things that we learn here, you will come across in AP2, and if you understand them now, it will be much easier to go through the AP2 class, either with me or with any other instructor. Okay? So these foundational concepts are, first, homeostasis. It's a maintenance of dynamic equilibrium. In the internal environment. Okay? So you can think of it as a teeter-totter. Okay? It is not static. Okay? Meaning that it does not stay at the same level, whatever parameter it is. So that's dynamic. Equilibrium, balance. Your body parameters are in the balance. They hover around a certain numbers, like your body temperature, around 36.6 Celsius. Your blood pH around 7.4. Your blood pressure around 120/70. They're not exactly the same all the time, but they hover around. Okay? Internal environment, everything confined within your body. Well, kind of skin too, yeah, but not entirely within. Does that make sense? Okay. How do we maintain that homeostasis? So, the concept of positive feedback. Sorry, not positive, negative feedback. Okay, so what is that? You have some kind of a change in your internal environment. This change is sensed. Sensing is the crucial part. Okay? As the result of the sensing, you have a response. And importantly, in negative feedback, the result of that response is that change is going away. You eat a cake. Your blood sugar dramatically goes up. It is sensed by beta cells in your pancreas. They produce insulin, which takes sugar from your blood into your liver cells. And sugar in your blood goes down. This is the classic negative feedback. Virtually all bodily functions are regulated via negative feedback. Okay? So, negative feedback is actually good. Now, positive feedback follows kind of a similar sequence of events. So you start with some kind of a change in the internal environment, which gets sensed. And that sensing produces some kind of a response. But the problem is that this response increases, amplifies the change. Okay? Now, is positive feedback. So positive feedback. Negative feedback is a pendulum. You take it away from the equilibrium point, let it go, and eventually it gets back to that equilibrium point. Positive feedback is a ball on top of the curved surface. You don't know where it goes. It definitely is going to fall off, and you have no idea what the consequences are going to be. The consequences of any positive feedback response are usually cataclysmic. Good example is hypovolemic shock. When a person loses a lot of blood, that decreases the blood pressure and blood flow, including blood flow through the heart. When blood flow through the heart reduces, less oxygen, less nutrients, your heart pumps weaker, meaning lower blood pressure, lower blood flow, weaker heart, and it just goes on as the vicious cycle, and eventually the person dies. 3 examples that I know of the positive feedback that actually works in the human body. Actually works. It's so like kind of a good ones. Okay. Three examples. Formation of the platelet plug. It's a very, very local response. Okay, when you get injured and platelets start to stick together, that's positive feedback. Ovulation is regulated by positive feedback. And again, very local. Well, you kind of can argue ovulation is local, hormonal regulation is kind of systemic. And again, it goes for a very short period of time. And of course, labor. Uterus contracts, pushes the fetus. Fetus presses on the cervix. That sends the signal to the pituitary. Pituitary releases oxytocin. Uterus contracts more push, more pressure, more signal, more oxytocin from pituitary, and just goes on and on and on until essentially a cataclysm happens. The baby is delivered. From a physiological standpoint, it's a huge cataclysm. So far, questions? Okay. Now, that kind of concludes the whole idea of homeostasis and positive, negative feedback. Now, when we consider these responses, I want to be very clear. We do not generally include your conscious decisions. So when that person with the diabetes injects insulin to reduce blood glucose, that is not homeostasis. That is not negative feedback. That makes sense? That's kind of a conscious decision. When you dress up, when you're cold, it's your conscious decision. You don't have to, you can shiver. It's going to work. Make sense? Okay. Now, next, let's talk about organ systems a little bit. And I'm going to, just for the sake of the video, I'm going to go over the main systems. And I'm going to try to use as much space as possible so I don't have to raise it all the time. Okay? Let me know if you can see stuff here. So systems, let's think about it. So what do we have? We have integumentary. That's your skin, stuff like protection, thermoregulation. We have, well, let's just go. Nervous, the way we study them. So that's communication, responses, conscious responses and stuff like that. Skeletal, that will be support, storage of calcium, movement. Muscular, again, support, movement, generation of heat. When I tell you the functions, that's as deep as we're going to go right now. Does that make sense? And actually, I lay them up in the way we go through them in AP1 and AP2. That's your AP1 right here. Then we have endocrine, regulation of the bodily function using hormones. So completely out of your conscious control. You have no power of endocrine system. Digestive, absorption of nutrients and excretion of wastes. Cardiovascular, that's a delivery system, so movement of blood, essentially. Respiratory, so mostly getting oxygen in, CO2 out of the lungs, a little bit maintenance of the blood pH. Now the biggest burden of blood pH maintenance lies on the renal system, which not only produces urine and excretes waste, but also maintains acid-base balance and electrolyte balance, essentially keeping pH in check. And reproduction. One that I kind of forgot to, immune system and lymphatic system. Okay. Protection against various pathogens. That's the level I can ask you. Okay, we good? Now, what comprises what's the hierarchy of the structures? You need to know the hierarchy of the structures. That's very straightforward. We do not care about molecules. Okay, we start with cells. We're not in the chemistry class. So cells comprise tissue. Okay, there are 4 tissues. We'll address this today. Tissues, more than one, comprise an organ. That's important. More than one. So your skin is an organ and an organ system at the same time. Well, it's kind of better to describe it as an organ system. So organs comprise organ systems, and organ systems comprise an organism. Does that idea here make sense? Okay, that's usually very, very, very simple. Okay, good? Any questions so far?
How do you pronounce that word at the top?
Speak up.
How do you pronounce the word at the top?
Hierarchy. I'm not going to ask this word. Don't worry about it.
Okay.